Welcome to another Quantum Conversation, brought to you by AcousticHealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and I invite you to sit back as we enter the quantum realm, that space of the greater part of you. It is your connection to infinite possibilities, infinite potential, and infinite mastery. We are talking about the quantum realm, where healing takes place. Dr. Eric Pearl is the author of The Reconnection, Heal Others, Heal Yourself. This book tells the story of how he first encountered the reconnective healing frequencies, and it's how he began on the path of healing. At first he was skeptical, but now he has come to understand that there is a universal intelligence which is accessible to everyone, one that can facilitate extraordinary healings by bringing us into alignment, balance, and harmony. Dr. Pearl explains reconnective healing as happening in the quantum realm, outside of time and space, but it's accessible here in the physical realm.
If you imagine this huge, vast, endless, beginningless, timeless universe, but we don't occupy the entire universe. We live within a huge bubble floating around with it. This is where humanity exists. And the bubble is essentially our existence of height, width, depth, and time, or time-space. We've been working with our energy healing techniques by accessing portions of what's been inside that bubble, because everything inside our bubble of existence has been energy. So we've had the Reiki energy portion and the Qigong energy portion and the Alpha, Beta, Delta, Gamma energy portion and this energy portion of that. And we focus in on it through our focal points, or what some people might refer to as techniques. But reconnective healing transcends technique. So it allows us to access all of the energy within the bubble, which you would think by itself is such a huge gift that should be enough, but there's more. And the reason that there's more is because of our timeless nature. You see, what happens is, as we access the entirety of the energy within that bubble of height, width, depth, and time, space, the bubble then begins to expand, because you see, time is moving faster. Time is moving faster in all directions at once. So time is expanding and our bubble expands. Now picture or imagine a balloon or a bubble. As it expands, it becomes more thin, more sheer, more permeable. It begins to ultimately disappear. If the bubble begins to become more thin, sheer, and permeable and disappear, then this is what quantum physics says time is disappearing. And as time disappears, it brings quantum physics to the next level of its teaching, is that ultimately time is an illusion. So the 4 points that quantum physics teaches us in steps, once we let go of our techniques, once we occupy the entirety of the energy within height, width, depth, and time, is that A, time is moving faster, B, time is expanding, C, time is disappearing, and D, time is an illusion. So as long as we, in the energy healing field, or in reconnective healing, I should say, let go of our techniques, then we continue to move and expand with time into our true timeless nature.
That was quite fascinating and mind-expanding, and what we learn about our own physical bodies and the makeup of these energy bodies confirms just what you said there about this bubble expanding. Can you share more on those 4 points of quantum mechanics?
Well, really those 4 points of what it is are the stages of what time is going through, and we don't really have to stop at those stages. You see, time moving faster is what we tend to hear. Time is moving faster. We hear it all the time, haha, not on the word. And what's interesting about that is our perception of everything here is linear. So when we think of faster, we think of how long it takes to go from the beginning of Main Street to the end of Main Street. How long does it take to drive that or walk that or run it? That's time, starting in one place, going to another place. That's the way we view it. But time is not linear. Time is really moving faster in all directions at once. So go back to the balloon analogy. Imagine a point in the center of the balloon, and suddenly soft arrows start shooting out from that point in all directions, all angles at once. As they get to the balloon, these soft arrows push the balloon further and further out. So these arrows of time being nonlinear are actually allowing the balloon of time to expand. As they shoot the balloon into expansion, the balloon begins to disappear. And we recognize once our consciousness moves beyond that, that time has been an illusion. Now, quantum physics starts to explain this a little bit, especially when it shows us how we move faster than time. Within reconnective healing, we move faster than time. The healing's part of what fascinates science about reconnective healing is that whereas our energy healing techniques, you say you need to come back again and again and again, and the healings slowly evolve over time, in reconnective healing, the healings seem to be fairly immediate. We don't even want to say instantaneous because an instant is a measurement of time, but they appear to be fairly immediate. Now, how does this happen? According to quantum physics, they explain this in a way that reconnective healing appears to allow us access to or open up wormholes. Now, I am going to try to describe a wormhole over this interview, and let's see what a decent job I might be able to do of it. For us to do this, we can imagine this, or if you want, take a piece of paper. If you're listening to this and you have maybe an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, take the paper and on one far end of it, write the letter A. So like to the far left of my paper, I'm writing the letter A, and to the far right of my paper, I'm writing the letter B. Here are 2 points. Okay, so you have A to B. It takes a certain amount of time to travel from A, the far left of that paper, to B, the far right of that paper, right? Because how you measure time is through distance. And so, what if the distance disappeared? What if you now fold that paper in half so point A is directly over point B? Now you don't have to travel the distance of the page to get there. You could take a pin and poke a hole between A and B and immediately connect A and B without any distance. That pinhole, that connection, that tiny little travel, could be thought of as a wormhole. And wormholes begin to explain how how can I explain this? How there are speeds faster than what we consider to be the speed of light. Did that visual translate?
Absolutely. It does. And so this is how the reconnective healing works. And when people see you doing this, you are moving your hands, and sometimes people even feel the energies or something going on as that reconnection is taking place. Let's go back to this topic of wormholes. That is how the reconnective healing is working. When you're doing that reconnective healing and working to, say, open up wormholes, for example, of really connecting that energy, what conscious state are you in and what's going on there?
Well, you don't really have to give that any thought at all. Isn't that fascinating? There is nothing you really need to think about or visualize other than your awareness of what you're feeling. What I teach is that you focus on two things. What do I feel? And sometimes how does that correlate with what I see? Because as you learn how to feel and find and play with the reconnective healing frequencies, as you focus on what you're feeling, you tend to see the person that you're working with. You tend to see their bodies go into involuntary movements. You start to see their fingers move up and down, or their arms and legs jump, or their eyes rapidly dart back and forth. Their breathing become kind of step-like or staccato. You'll see color changes in their face, muscle movement in their neck. So you correlate how you tune into what you're feeling with what you're seeing. In essence, it's all about observation. Observation of self, observation of the other. You become the observer and the observed. I'm observing what I'm feeling, I'm observing what I'm seeing. Or the witness and the witnessed, or the seer and the seen. And you begin to observe and witness yourself in the situation while you're observing and witnessing the other person. You become one with them. So not only does time disappear, but separation disappears. You begin to realize that everything is touching, even when it appears as if nothing is touching. Everyone is touching, and no one is touching. There is a field of unity and connection. So how can we explain this? Well, we can look at the concept in quantum physics. And you know, by the way, I have to tell you, a wonderful voice in quantum physics that's new, relatively, fresh, dynamic, and of today's language, not old speak, is that of Nassim Haramein. And Nassim and I will both be presenting next month at the Conscious Life Expo here in Los Angeles. I think it will be, if I look for the dates of the Conscious Life Expo here in LA, it's going to be the 11th, 10th, 11th, and 12th of February here in Los Angeles. But anyhow, what happens is, imagine the most solid object you can think of. Maybe it's a metal tabletop. If you look at it through an electron microscope, you'll find that no matter how solid the object is, whatever you're thinking of, it's comprised of atoms, which are comprised of subatomic molecules. Subatomic molecules include electrons, protons, neutrons, quarks, all those fun little things. Leptons, which are different than leprechauns, but they're both small, not necessarily green. And so let's say you look at one atom, smallest atom you can think of. In the center of the atom, there's a nucleus comprised of electrons comprised of neutrons and protons. And outside, spinning around that nucleus, is an electron or more. Now, we know when we see an atom that the nucleus is in the center and there's a lot of space and the electrons circle the outside. So we know that that's space. The funny thing is, there's actually space even between the protons and neutrons in the nucleus itself. If you take two protons and blow each of those protons up to be the size of an orange. Do you know that those two oranges, the distance between them would be the equivalent of 2 to 2.5 football fields? That's how much space there is. Now, what science would explain to us is that atoms are mostly empty space. Here's where the confusion comes in. It's a very poor word choice to call it empty space, because there's nothing empty about it. We see that there's no solid material touching, so we assumed it's empty, but really that space is a field of information. There's information dancing with it that tells the nucleus to stay close, tells the protons to stay further away, tells the metal table to take on the characteristics of metal, which is different than the characteristics of a wooden table that might be nearby it, or a plastic table or a glass table. So everything is a field of energy and information. Let's say that you take a book and you place the book on the table. Well, everyone would say, if you ask them, that the book is touching the table. But actually, nothing is touching. None of the material comprising the table is touching. None of the material comprising the book is touching, and the book is not touching the table. There are energy fields dancing back and forth, allowing these things to maintain their characteristics and their distance and their relationship with one another. It's the same with people. When we hold someone's hand, we think we're touching. When you're standing across the street from someone else, you say you're not touching each other because you're across the street. But actually, every movement you have, even a glance or a look, affects them. So everything is touching and nothing is touching. Everyone is touching and no one is touching. Are you with me this far? So let's play with that concept. With reconnective healing, it's done without touching the other person. Let's say, for example, that you hold your hand near someone in the relationship. Well, let's say first you touch someone, but you're not really touching, and yet your fields are interacting. Now you move 1 inch or 3 inches away. Now you know physically you're not considered to be touching, but there's that field of empty space which isn't really empty. It's an informational field, so you're still affecting that person. Now you move a foot away, a yard away, 12 yards away. You are still affecting and touching that person, and you're affecting them by changing their vibration of who and what they are. How does this happen? It happens at least on the level of the proton. Right now, Loren, you and I are talking, and certain things I'm saying may be interesting to you, and certain things you may have already heard, and certain things you might be exploring in your mind, and certain things you might be getting right away, and the same thing for everyone listening to this interview. What's happening is every time we gain an insight or an understanding, it affects a proton somewhere within us. Every insight and understanding is embodied, encompassed in that proton. But once it's embodied and encompassed in one proton, then it affects another proton. And then it affects another. And then it affects every proton within your body. But any change within any one proton within your body affects every proton anywhere else within another person, within another being, and ultimately every proton within the entire universe. You see, this then begins to transcend time, because the proton within you, let's say someone dies, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The dust becomes part of a tree. The tree grows an apple. Someone else in the future comes along and eats the apple. You've affected someone in the future. And since we're timeless beings, we may simultaneously be affecting things that we perceive to be in the past, because you see, what we're learning to understand through quantum physics today is that there is no past or future, is that everything is simultaneous. So everyone who has little business cards that say they're reading past lives, they need to change their business cards. They're not reading past lives, they're reading simultaneous lives. There's no more deja vu, it's all simulvu. So we're affecting past, present, and future. We're affecting every proton in the universe. And the protons then allow for a continued expansion. So our desire to learn, our curiosity is our desire to learn. Our desire to learn is our desire to expand. As we expand, every proton within everyone else and everything else and within the universe expands. And ultimately, if you allow yourself to recognize this, your expansion not only contributes to, but is required by or required for the continued expansion of the universe. Our curiosity. Our curiosity is the process, ultimately, that allows for the continued expansion of the entire universe. So when any one of us sits around and feels that we are unimportant in the grand scheme, we need to think again. There is no one being, no matter how they may appear to someone else, and there is no one being, no matter how you may appear to yourself, who is less than vitally important to the continued expansion of everyone and everything, the universe itself.
Isn't that beautiful and so comforting? Very well said. Yes, I believe it was Nassim Harriman who mentioned that the wormholes are within us. So the two of you speaking on this subject is really going to shift a lot of consciousness and further help with that expansion of consciousness. This then is something that we can all learn. It really is moving energy with consciousness.
It is. It's an expansion of consciousness. And we are an expression of consciousness. And as consciousness, what does consciousness really need? I mean, think about it for a moment. What does consciousness really need to exist? Well, consciousness is really awareness, isn't it? Consciousness is really, in a sense, self-awareness. So anyone, in order to be self-aware, you have to have feedback. As Nassim says, consciousness is a feedback between the external world and the internal world, and that's fundamental to all things. All things. Now, once we grasp that, and that's a difficult grasp, because we think, a rock is not conscious. A rock can't be alive, for example. We'll pick on things and say they can't be, but yet you crack a rock open and you see crystal formations. All things are conscious. All things are feeding information to the vacuum, and the vacuum is feeding it back. The amount that you are able to feed into the system is really proportionate to how much information can come in. It's hard to think of inanimate objects as conscious. It's hard to think of them as conscious, but without a certain level of consciousness, a rock wouldn't hold its shape. Without a certain level of consciousness, the cushion on your chair or sofa wouldn't know how to spring back. And we're sure that there's no consciousness in that. We delineate where consciousness can and can't exist, and all we're actually delineating is the level of awareness that we allow ourselves to tune into. We delineate in so many areas, and you watch people. You'll watch people or hear them say, humans have souls, but animals don't. Humans can think, but animals can't. And we say the silliest things. We're just not paying attention. I had a dog, had just the sweetest little Doberman puppy. And when the Doberman got large, she was a little too large to really comfortably sleep in the bed. So it let her sleep on a beautiful doggy bed. But she wanted to sleep in the bed with us. Now, what the dog would do was watch. And when our eyes were closed, she would assume we were asleep. She would get up and come to get in the bed. But there was no carpet on the floor. It was wood. So we would hear her nails go click, 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 click on the floor as she'd walk along, open her eyes. She'd see us look at her, and she'd run back to bed. Do you know, she figured that out, and she learned once her eyes were closed to lift her claws up so she would only step on the ground with the soft pads of her foot, and it wouldn't make any noise. And we think that dogs can't think. It was recently, it appeared in an article, a main news stream article within the past, I'm going to say, estimate a year and a half, that if you have fish, they recognize your face. It's not because you're holding food that they come to the tank. They know who you are, as opposed to if a neighbor walks in, they recognize your features. Do you know that an amoeba, a one-celled amoeba, if it's traveling in a certain direction, if you place a pin in front of it, it will separate in half. It will split in half. The two halves will move around that pin, and then it will rejoin. We don't understand the complexity of life or the intelligence. We don't understand how we adapt. Adaptation is life. You want an example of adaptation is life? Today, CNN, I think, reported that a certain kind of a shark, I don't remember, a certain kind of a shark fish that was kept in captivity, a female, away from any males for a number of years, got pregnant and gave birth. Now, she got pregnant and gave birth before because there was a male, but she had been separated as part of this place's way of limiting reproduction. I don't know why, but they wanted to limit population or something. She got pregnant anyway. This is the third known living creature that was sexually reproducing, and then when kept away from a member of the opposite sex, was able to reproduce without the requirement of a member of the opposite sex. We don't give enough credit to consciousness and adaptation because we don't give enough credit to ourselves to recognize consciousness and adaptation. Part of it might be a fear. Part of it might be the fear that what if human beings aren't, at the top of the realm? What if we aren't the best, the most adaptable, the most unique, the most this, that, and the other? Part of it might be belief systems that we were given that we live in fear of questioning. Yet our nature is to question. Our desire is to question, and not intentionally, but coincidentally, synchronistically, I should say, coming back to the point we made in the earlier part of this talk, it's our curiosity that is a required contribution to the continued expansion of the universe. So we must question our beliefs, no matter how difficult or challenging they are. Look, even you hear the Pope questions and changes, belief systems now and again, and says, today we are recognizing this, that, and the other. And people follow. But we shouldn't have to wait for a mainstream recognized figure to question before we do. We have to recognize that we are inherently here to question and grow. What we do is we talk about things. You might talk to someone who says, well, I can't believe in healing because it's spiritual and I'm scientific. And the truth is, if you're truly scientific, then you recognize that quantum physics is demonstrating for us the actual existence and the reasons for spirituality. And you find out that spirituality and science aren't opposites, but they're actually well intertwined supports for one another. We say, oh, someone's come up with a concept, but it can't be true because if it were true, science would have proven it. And we hear that all the time. If it were true, science would already know it. And that's really, if you allow yourself to think about it, not the most intelligent stance to take, because everything has to exist before science proves it, before science discovers it. Otherwise, there would be nothing for science to discover if it didn't exist before science discovers it. So our blinders often have us thinking that absence of proof is proof of absence, and they're really not one and the same.
Again, a fascinating topic and a fascinating discussion. I know that many listeners to this show, we absolutely understand that animals have consciousness, and many do understand that even crystals have a consciousness. But what you're talking about is this field, this matter, this consciousness that holds together matter. Consciousness is everywhere, and that's what you are doing then. You're tuning into that on a quantum level, a timeless level. That's what the reconnection healing is doing, reconnecting to that consciousness and that field of information. So this allows people to heal, and also what happens in people's lives when this happens.
Well, now this is a visual that's just coming to mind right now. But whether you know how to knit or crochet, or whether you can just imagine knitting or crocheting, we've all seen someone knitting or crocheting. Now, what happens is you continue to connect as something expands through stitches. So now you are, with each stitch, or with each, knit one, purl two, or whatever we want to call it, we expand something. So we reconnect the same piece of yarn. We connect it again and again and again, and yet it's never been disconnected, but we are reconnected. We have never been completely separated from, because nothing is, or disconnected, and yet we are reconnecting continuously at a higher, more expansive level. And this reconnection, because everything is connected interactively, doesn't require that you need to be present. So reconnective healing can take place via distance. Reconnective healing, evolutionary changes can happen not only without touch, can happen by being in different locations, can happen by voice. So what we're excited about is that we have been teaching all these years reconnective healing in a program that we called Level 1 and Level 2. Level 1 is for people who just want to become familiar with the work and play with it, seekers who want to understand what's going on and want to explore. And it's a little bit about self-healing. as well. Now, level 2 is far more focused on learning how to facilitate healings for others, working at a higher level. We use teaching assistants in both level 1 and 2, so you're always guided, your questions are answered, you're shown how to do things. But we can only reach so many people doing that. So we have taken the first portion of the Reconnective Healing training program, level 1, and we are spending a lot of time and focus because this is new for me. We are filming it and making it available online. So the level 1 training program will now be available easily for far less money to everyone around the globe wherever you live. You don't have to take time off of work. You can learn it in your living room. You don't have to travel or any of those things. You can learn it online at your own pace. But what's interesting is the frequencies communicate, and you entrain with them, and they entrain with you and expand with them through this media that you and I are talking to your listening audience on right now, through the internet. So you see, quantum physics allows us to be everywhere and anywhere expanded at one time. And so we are expanding the teaching program for people who just want to learn this work. And I think this is really, really, really key. As a matter of fact, what we're asking people to do right now, and if any of the people listening to your program have been affected by Reconnective Healing through the book or through the training programs or through just receiving healing sessions or their practitioners, is that we are asking you to submit your stories. We're asking you to share with us what you have been experiencing, because we think this is really key for those of you who want to say, this has affected my life, or it's affected my child, or it's affected me, or I've affected other people's lives through Reconnective Healing, doing this, that, or that, or the other, because we think that we understand that today what's key is that you can't be thinking of Reconnective Healing as Eric Pearl. We need to recognize that Reconnective Healing is the practitioner. And this is the key, because one day Eric Pearl might not be walking around on this planet in this physical form anyway. And what we want to understand and make clear is that everyone will continue this work, because when one proton changes, every proton in the universe changes, and we want to carry this on forward, but not everyone consciously recognizes the proton exchange. So we need people facilitating the work for others to grasp it, and we're training more and more people to teach the work, and we're hoping this online level 1 will be used to empower many, many, many people around the globe who can't, for one reason or another, make it to a live training program.
Yes, thank you for that, and for validating that this entrainment indeed is encoded. It takes place over this digital format. That is a beautiful technology and a wonderful way to use it. So thank you. Now, everyone can do this, whether it's for their own exploration or for their own understanding or self-healing. And you mentioned that was level 1. So now's a good time to talk about your special offer, because it is related to that.
Absolutely. The level 1 online program is being made available just to your listeners. It was, or it retails at $399, which is like $400, $399. But your listeners will get it for only $250, which I think is a wonderful concept. Quantum Conversations is empowering a lot of people, and we want to help with that. And it's a requirement, of course, or it will, I should say, it will allow you, once you do the online level 1, to also then attend after that the level 2, but the level 2 will be taught by me with teaching assistants, and it will be taught in person. As a matter of fact, we are giving one full level 1, 4-day level 1, 2 training program. Our last 4-day live training program before we only do the level 2s live from there forward is going to be in Los Angeles, here at the Biltmore Hotel, March 3rd through the 7th. But once you've attended, or once you've gotten the online level 1, you can attend just the level 2s. We're going to be doing a level 2 in Atlanta, June 2nd through the 4th, and in Detroit, June 23rd through the 25th, and in Denver, September 8th through the 10th. So those are the ones that you can take after through the online level 1. I just wanted to add, just to say a few things, because I want people to grasp the empowerment. We've held the level 1 in person because we do see the powerful value of a live group experience. But today's digital technology really has greatly expanded the way we interact and bond with one another. And we are, as everyone is, hopefully, growing and evolving with time. So the online level 1 allows us to take a few moments every day toward our own life progress and our own healing, whether we want to use it on a mobile phone or on a tablet, a laptop, a desktop. We can begin that journey to heal others and to heal ourselves. We can work at our own pace. It allows new possibilities for us to interact with the material that we learn and with students around the globe. So we'll learn how to feel, follow, connect, and interact with the reconnective healing frequencies, the all-encompassing spectrum of energy, light, and information, and it will make you eligible to attend a level 2. It's an 8-part customized training program where you will discover how to immediately access these new frequencies of healing. It's taught basically by me and by my partner, Jillian, and I'm really excited about it. I'm just really excited about it. So I don't know what else to say, except I'm really excited about it. Do you get that?
We thank you. We love that you're very excited about it, because so are we. It really is amazing, and it is changing the world, and it will be changing in our medical field. This will be received. Do you have nurses and medical professionals from the traditional field stepping up, incorporating this?
Absolutely. Reconnective healing is very interesting. It tends to attract a fairly equal number of males and females. It tends to attract from every age group, although I would say mostly 30s into 50s, but there's a lot of teens and 20s. There are even some kids, and there are, 80 and 90-year-olds as well who take the work. There are doctors, nurses, physical therapists, medical researchers, chiropractic doctors, osteopathic doctors, everyone from mainstream medicine. But equally, it attracts a lot of people who've been involved in the more energy-based fields of healing, Reiki, Jurei, Jinshin, Qigong, Alpha, Beta, Delta, Gamma, quantum this, mattress that, who want to expand beyond the techniques, who realize that technique itself has been our limitation, and when we transcend technique and release it, it's like transcending the training wheels on a bicycle. Taking them off, you may have mastered the bicycle with training wheels when we master our energy healing techniques, but what we really want to do is master the bicycle itself, and what we really want to do is remove the training wheels of technique and actually master healing itself. So let's say that about 25% of the people come from mainstream healthcare, another 25% of the people come from energy-based healing, but the other 50% are the mainstream population. They're teachers, they're college students, they're housewives, they're CEOs, they're engineers, they're police officers, and they're bus and taxi drivers, everyone from everywhere. It's fascinating. I had no idea that this would happen, none at all. I never studied energy healing techniques. I didn't consciously intend intend for this to happen. Really, the essence of this is that I practiced as a doctor of chiropractic for 12 years. One night, a lamp next to my bed turned itself on and woke me up. I felt as if someone was in my house. I went looking. I couldn't find anyone. I went into my office on that Monday morning. People started having healings. And I thought, this is an interesting little thing that went on. Who would have thought that it would have become worldwide? Right now, the book, my first book that I wrote is called The Reconnection, Heal Others, Heal Yourself, is an international bestseller, gone just now into its 40th language, Arabic. Finally, Arabic took a long time. That's a huge part of the world, and I'm so glad that it's opening up and reaching more and more and more of the globe. As a matter of fact, if you want to find out more what's going on, for our full schedule and to find out more about the work, or to go onto YouTube and see interviews about this, you can just go to thereconnection.com, or you can call our office at 323-960-0012 and get a lot more questions answered personally, which is always a nice thing.
Thank you for that connection to yourself. You are approachable, and congratulations on the expansion of this work across the globe. Eric, it is quite extraordinary. And coming up next, we're going to rebroadcast an earlier conversation with you that goes deeper into that story you just said. And I wanted to say, your mother also, when she was pregnant with you, did she have a near-death experience? What is that story, the true story there? And do you think that is related to your openness and consciousness in this lifetime?
When my mother was giving birth to me, she had what is commonly called a near-death experience. She called it a life-after-death experience because she says it's not near-death. When you're there, you have that much of an experience. You know it. You've died. But she had left her body. She didn't want to, but she knew she was dying while she was on the delivery table with me. She felt herself leaving her body. She passed through levels of spirits and beings. She was given the secrets of the universe, why the grass was green, why the sky is blue, why the earth is round, how you can't blame God for even seemingly the most horrible things, how there's a reason for everything and everything makes perfect sense. You understand it when you're there. How war is a temporary state of barbarism that we will eventually move beyond. And she understood that if there's only one thing that those who leave this physical form regret, is that those still left behind, still having the human experience, it's that we mourn them because we don't understand what a beautiful place of love that is where they are, that it's home, it's where we all come from, and where we all return to, and that we are only there for short periods of time in which we grasp understanding. And and she was there, and she saw colors she'd never seen, and smelled flowers she had never smelled, and had one glance was a communication of volumes of information. She understood who people were. There was no male or female or physical, visual appearance. There was no judgment. It was a love that couldn't be described. And the funny thing was, as she was there having this experience, and it's I wrote about it in depth. It's the entire second chapter of The Reconnection. I wrote about her experience because we spent a lot of time on the phone trying to get the words right, even though, as she would say, we don't have words here for that. And as she came into that beautiful experience there, suddenly she found herself being sent back here to life. And for all the struggling she did not to die in the first place, now she didn't want to return. But she was told she had to return to raise her child. So here I am. Now, she did die again about 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. And she was very much looking forward to it and ready because of her experience. It was so beautiful. And the interesting thing is when she had that experience, she lost her fear of death. And when she shared that experience with me, that's in chapter 2, I had no fear of death since then. I have none. And I actually look forward to that experience. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not looking to die now. I'm really not.
Yes, thank you.
As a matter of fact, I have a lot to do, and I plan to be here for a long time. But I am also, when my time comes, looking forward to that experience as well.
Wow. See, that's great. So that experience for her and that knowledge that she knew within absolutely allowed you to step forth in this beautiful mastery that you are showing others how they too can tap into that mastery. It is our mastery. Eric Pearl, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Your special offer, of course, is available on the special offer button on this webpage. And as we say goodbye, leave us with your optimistic view of humanity in the future.
The future is the present expanded in love, no war. Our consciousness is the creation of global harmony, and we are creating global harmony today.
Beautiful words. Yes, we are creating global harmony. We can feel the power of what you just said there. Eric, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here on Quantum Conversations.
Thank you for allowing me to be a guest on your show, and I look forward to the next time we speak.
And now we rebroadcast an earlier conversation with Dr. Eric Pearl on how the reconnective healing frequencies came into his life. Enjoy this healing conversation encore. Eric Pearl is a recognized healer around the world and conducts seminars to train others on how to use this healing modality. Welcome, Dr. Eric Pearl, to Healing Conversations.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here.
You have got an amazing journey in the discovery of this ability that you have, and we're going to hear about it and how you've personally changed and how your patients have changed. But before we get into that, can you tell us, for those who have not heard of this before, what is the reconnective process?
Well, reconnective healing is a new level of healing that many of the researchers feel may well be here on the planet for the very first time, because it takes us beyond what we've been able to access through energy healing and allows us to reconnect more fully with the truth, the essence, the integrity of who and what we are as spirit, as what we experience in between lifetimes. And then we access that fullness when we're here to become more multidimensional beings. And that's part of our lesson in this human form, to discover how to become more the multidimensional beings that we truly are, the full entity that we are on the other side.
And that really means feeling the energy and seeing with new eyes, as we've heard from Scripture. So when you're feeling and working with this energy, how does that heal someone?
Well, in 3 words, I don't know.
Okay.
Really don't know. That's part of what makes it so fascinating, and that's part of what allows this to be so broad and comprehensive, the willingness to not know. Because, we are raised here in a way of we're supposed to know everything, know the answers. We go to school. Why didn't you get 100% on the test? Well, what didn't you know? And the point is that when we say we know the answer about something, we stop learning right there on the spot. We say this is right, so this is wrong. Everything inside this box of correct is correct. Everything outside of it is incorrect. And and we stop learning. But when we're willing to say, I don't know, it entices us to explore, to observe without judgment. I don't know, however, I can see this possibility. I don't know, however, I can see that possibility and that possibility. And if I can put this possibility together with another possibility, I have even a greater possibility, which turns out not to be the answers, but turn out to be building blocks for us asking even greater questions, because our growth here comes in the questioning. We're about the questioning. Philosophy is all about the questioning. And this is what we're here for. This is where we'll all know all the answers all too soon. We'll all know all the answers all too soon. But we're here actually to simply observe without judgment, to become the observer and the observed, the witness and the witnessed, the seer and the seen.
Now you're talking quantum physics, and so let's talk a little bit more about quantum medicine.
But are we really? I mean, think for a moment. Sometimes people say, well, is this healing spiritually based, or is it based in quantum physics? And I'm saying, is there a distinction, or is quantum physics just giving us more socially acceptable terminology to start to explain the insights into the spirituality of what is? I mean, this is spiritual healing without stopping you on the forehead, falling over backwards, and passing around a collection plate. It's not about religion.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit is, well, what causes trees to grow up and tree roots to grow down and children to be born with 2 eyes and 1 nose. This is spirit. It's inflowing with the laws, the universal laws that we begin to discover when we simply observe without putting judgment and explanation to them. And this is spirituality to me. To me, our religions are various windows out on spirituality. Some of us grow up looking out of one window all of our lives because it's the same window that our parents and our grandparents looked out of. Some of us marry into another religion. We see out of 2 religions windows. Some of us explore many. But even if we explore looking at the universe through all of the windows that we can find, we'll never see and understand the whole picture, because each window is limited by the window frames. And each view becomes more limited by the wall that's required to support the frame that supports the window. It's only when we're willing to all go up on the roof, join hands, and have a party that we can see 360 degrees in all directions instead of arguing over whose window is correct. When they're all correct, they're all corrected. They're just different. It's like different facets of a diamond. There's not a wrong facet.
Yes, well, I love that, because it's true what you said earlier just a moment ago, that quantum physics is proving what spirituality has always known and the great ancient wisdom. So, yes, it was there before quantum physics. Quantum physics, I guess, would just be our terminology for it in this day for those scientists out there that need the scientific proof, the fact. So that's why
Really?
I love it. It's blending science with spirituality.
So much was judged in a lot of times with the religions when they, remember when they tried to imprison Galileo for having the audacity to say that the Earth revolves around the sun. And at that point in time, it looked very much as if religion and science were walking in opposite directions. And they did appear to walk in opposite directions. But it also appeared as if the Earth were flat, which made it look like they were walking away from one another. But the Earth was round. And as they continued their journey, they came back to a point, and that's where we are now, as they're coming back to this point of religion losing a lot of its dogma and us looking more for the true spirituality of the inspiration of the religions and for science through quantum physics supporting it at the same time. So a lot of what people argue about as controversies aren't opposites at all. They just need to step 3 feet back further to see how they're one and the same.
When you look around at the world today and what's going on and the great shift of the ages that is upon us, and we are in the thick of it now, what are you doing personally, or what advice do you have, or what's your vision of the future?
Feel, notice, listen, and observe is what we can do in this moment, because the future is unfolding. We stand still for a moment and watch it. We allow ourselves to truly become ensconced in it and to experience it. There's a shift. There's a shift going on in time. There's a shift we're stepping into right now, possibly with the 2012 situation. It's not the first shift, and it won't be the last. But it's what we're noticing right this moment. Time is moving faster. It's moving faster in all directions, and it's opening us up to more. Now, a simple way to explain this that will follow a little bit of the quantum physics, let's say, is to picture our existence here as a bubble. Picture a tiny little bubble in this huge, vast, endless universe. And our bubble, the wall of itself, our bubble, is comprised of the components height, width, depth, and time, our four-dimensional existence. And everything inside our bubble has been energy. So, for example, the life we've been living has been a life base where everything has been energy. Therefore, for example, the healing that we've had access to in the form of energy healing. There have been different techniques: Reiki, Turay, Qigong, Qigong, Mahjong, Beijing, Alpha, Beta, Delta, Gamma, 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z. All these are different techniques from one another. They all feel a little differently, and through the techniques, they access different parts of that energy that we've had. Now, today, time is moving faster. So what does that mean? Well, first it means time is moving faster, not like when you drive a car from point A to point B along a flat road, but time is moving faster in all directions at once. In other words, time is opening up and expanding, which means that our bubble is expanding further and further out into the universe. It's encompassing more of what has always existed outside of the illusion of time, the illusion of the time-space continuum. So it's timeless, but it hasn't been within our bubble of height, width, depth, and time before. So it's new now here for us. Now, this is a concept that will royally tend to irritate a number of people in the New Age community, because they want everything to be old, because their egos want to take claim of already knowing it. I remember this from my past life as Cleopatra for the 33rd time in Atlantis and Lemuria. But you know, sometimes something is just new. And isn't that wonderful that it's just new? Because we're also here for what's new, and we are expanding into an arena beyond the subsets of energy, once we put down our techniques or our telescopes, beyond the entirety of energy, into a comprehensive spectrum of energy, light, and information that is allowing us to become more. Now, we are not going to have a sudden jolt on December 21st, 2012. We're not going to peek under the bed sheets and scream because we're suddenly invisible. We might scream for another reason, but that will be a different interview, I'm quite certain. What we'll do, however, is maybe in 3 years, 6 years, 12 years, look back and say, look at the shift in human consciousness. Look at the change in human consciousness that was going on at that time. That's us. And our awareness of it brings the light and the recognition and the knowingness to us. And we end up sharing that, not just consciously, but as well inadvertently with one another and others in our presence as we share that expand. It can be as large as giving presentations. It can be as intimate as a smile that you get from the checker at a supermarket that has a different light in his or her eyes one day. This is the shift that we're going through. Now, if we want to study the heavens, for example, we have a tendency to go and buy a telescope. And then we buy a better telescope. And we focus more and more and deeper on specific areas of this universe. But of course, the more we focus in with that telescope, the more we also end up focusing out the rest of the larger picture. That's the expense. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with looking through the telescope. What it means is that after we've seen enough of the small chunks, as we grow and expand, our expansiveness, our consciousness yearns to see more. And that is our inner truth saying to us, put down the telescope. It's now time to look at the larger picture. That's why so many people who are the masters and the grandmaster teachers in the different energy healing techniques are beginning to recognize that the techniques themselves have been like training wheels on a bicycle. And although we've mastered the energy healing techniques, we haven't been here to master energy healing techniques. We've been here to master healing. We've been here to master the bicycle. And the only way for that to happen is to remove the training wheels. The true gift of the technique comes only in its transcendence. And this is the part of our expanding now in the healing field. And this is the part, if we can extrapolate this, to put down and to look for the techniques and the training wheels that we utilize in our lives and get the gift from them, but then recognize that the next gift is to step through that fear of, oh my God, am I going to fall on this bicycle without training wheels, only to discover that the bigger gift comes not in mastering the bicycle with training wheels, but in mastering the bicycle itself.
And so when you were talking about this change of consciousness and the shift, it really is a personal shift. It's a shift in consciousness. And your personal experience in this ability of yours to unfold in your life is quite fascinating. And so when I go to ask this question, do you think ETs will be landing on our planet or being able to be seen by us, I think I already know the answer because of your experience. Let's talk about your experience with angels. When you were a chiropractor in LA and you went and saw some psychics on the beach in Venice Beach, and then everything changed from there. Tell us about that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the angels. And I mean, it's a long story, but...
it's a long story. How long is this interview? No, I'm teasing, but let me try to condense it a bit. Let me give you the background story of what happened. The background story is I practiced chiropractic for about 12 years. I had one of the largest chiropractic practices in all of Los Angeles. When I went through a couple of life shifts, first of all, I ended a 6-year relationship that I thought would have been the relationship of my lifetime. And I had difficulty putting one foot physically in front of the other for a good couple of weeks, just working on my patients. And I was having difficulty with my staff, so one day I let them all go to create a new staff. So I was answering the phone, taking the payments, scheduling the appointments, stamping the envelopes, and running after the postman. That lasted for about an hour.
Uh-huh.
I quickly decided I needed to have new staff in there. And I ended up hiring this woman who was both the physical and audible incarnation of Fran Drescher's character, the nanny, before the nanny existed. It was a love-hate relationship from the beginning. I loved her. What I didn't realize was that the patients hated her. She was finishing filing her nails before she would pick up the telephone. She was borrowing money from them when I wasn't looking. All sorts of little charming, endearing aspects that she contained. But one day she decided... She said to me, anyway, that I had had enough stress in my life that I needed to take a day off and go to the beach, which really probably meant she wanted to take a day off from work and go to the beach and didn't want to spend her own money on gasoline, but we went.
Yes.
And while I was there, she came across this woman on the beach who was reading cards and told me I need to get my cards read by her. And I don't mind the concept of getting a card reading, but I'd like to go to someone who comes with a solid recommendation. You know, my brother went, she said this would happen in 10 days, and it did. Not some woman, you know, with a card table and folding chairs trying to flag you down on your otherwise intended good time at the beach. But she kept pushing me to go in that manly voice that life was just easier to agree. And I did. And I walked over to her, and the woman said, I've got $10 readings and $20 readings. What would you like? And I said, I'll take a $10 reading, which is pretty much what I received, a $10 reading, nothing too stand out, nothing too memorable. Mm-hmm. Except at the end, she said, well, there's this work that I do, and it's designed to reconnect us with the universe. And I asked more about what it was. That wasn't her wording, reconnect. I don't remember what her word was. But she explained that the meridian system in our bodies that are used by acupuncturists and acupressurists used to be much more comprehensive than it is today, because the meridians used to extend off of our bodies and tie into the ley lines zoom around the planet and the globe that connect us to the Earth, and then continue out and connect us to the other stars and planets in the space in between. And that there came a certain point in time where humanity was disconnected from this system, and as the universe continued to unfold and evolve in its great and wondrous rate, we continue to evolve and unfold, but not at that same rate. But we've come to a point where we can reconnect, and left alone, we will probably do that over so many coming future generations. But that she could do a work that was designed to tie us in right now, sort of like a supernatural broadband instantaneous hookup. And I, out of curiosity from listening to all this, I asked her how much she charged for it. And she said $333. And I said, no, thank you, because I could think of a lot of things to do with $333. And giving them to a, you know, gypsy card reader on the beach wasn't high on my list. Mm-hmm. But I got up to leave, and she scribbled something down on a piece of paper, and she said, here, you can read about this in a book called The Book of Knowledge, The Keys to Enoch by Dr. J.J. Hertock. Read chapter 317. It's only 8 little pages. So I thanked her very much. I put the paper in my pocket, and I left having no intention of paying any attention to that again. But I found I kept thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it. And finally one day I had an extra 10 minutes off from lunch before I went back to my office. And I stopped into a spiritual bookstore, and I got a copy of the book. Just took it down just to look at. I figured I would quickly skim through those 8 little pages. Have you ever seen that book?
It's been recommended, and I've been searching for it, so it's amazing. You'll have to tell us what it's about.
Well, let me tell you that there are 3 things that you cannot do with that book. Okay? You cannot read it, you cannot understand it, and you definitely cannot skim through it. Outside of that, it's a great book.
You have to sleep with it under your pillow.
The more confused I became. The more confused I became, the more intrigued I became. I went back and forth and tried to read it again and tried to read it again. And finally, after a while, I realized that with all the effort and energy I'd been expending around this, that it would probably just be cheaper and easier if I paid the woman her $333 and let her do the work. So I called her up. I made the appointment. She explained it was done over 2 sessions. So I did it. I did it on a Thursday, which was my day off, and I scheduled the second one for a Sunday. And there I was on my Thursday, having the session. I showed up at her place. She placed me in a massage table, dimmed the lights, put on the New Age tinkling music that she had available, and took her fingertips and started tracing these little line patterns on my body. All the while I'm thinking to myself, I cannot believe that I paid this woman $333 to draw lines on my body with her fingertips. And my mind was going off and jabbering. And finally it dawned on me at a certain point in time that I needed to stop the internal conversation and let go. And I've given her the money. I might as well see what comes from it. So with that, I drifted off, and about 45 minutes to an hour later, she touches me lightly, tells me to sit up slowly as if the earth had moved, except she was the only one of the 2 of us who noticed that. To slide to the edge of the table, let my feet hang, just heel to the ground. I'm thinking, isn't the ground where I left it? She walked me around the room trying to tell me to get back into my body. I humored her and did the whole get back into your body dance with her. I'd experienced nothing. I left and went home thinking that I couldn't have done anything more ridiculous than agree to have gone back to her on Sunday for part 2. I got home. The rest of the day was a normal day. I went to sleep that night, and I'm awakened an hour later by this bright light that comes shining through my eyes. I open my eyes to see what it is, and it's nothing seemingly spiritual or metaphysical. It's just the lamp next to my bed, and it turned itself on.
Wow.
But more intriguing than that to me was that I became acutely aware of the feeling that somebody was in my home who wasn't there when I'd gone to sleep. I can't tell you how uncomfortable of a feeling this is. Let's just say I got up with a knife, a can of pepper spray, and my Doberman Pinscher and went hunting.
Okay.
After about 20 minutes, I realized that I wouldn't find anyone, and I convinced myself that it had to be my imagination. I went back to sleep. That Sunday, I went to her for part 2. She did the same thing again, but the experience was different. I couldn't seem to lie still on the table. I was uncomfortable. It was a hot, oppressively hot August day in Southern California in this little tiny, non-air-conditioned one-bedroom apartment. But by the time she finished, I was so chilled that she had to wrap me in a blanket for a good 5 minutes. Now, at the end of that, I did experience something different. On one hand, it was something I had never experienced before. On the other hand, it was something that seemed totally familiar to me at the same time. It was this immense sense of peace. I remember leaving gently, sort of floating off. I remember getting into my car. I remember starting the ignition, the sound, the feel of the motor, beginning the drive home, and I don't remember anything else. I don't remember getting home. I don't remember going to sleep that night. I don't remember getting up in the morning. All that I recall is that I'm standing in the hallway in my office sometime mid-morning on Monday, and 2 of my employees are standing there facing me and saying, "What happened to you this weekend? What did you do? You look so different. You sound so different." I didn't want to say, well, I paid some very charming Jewish gypsy who called me Bubala $333 to draw lines in my body with their fingertips. Why do you ask? So I sort of, non-answered the question and went in to see my next patient. I adjusted the patient, then I told him to close his eyes and relax and allow the adjustment to settle in. And as it did, I could see that the patient's eyes were sort of moving rapidly back and forth. When he opened his eyes, he said to me, "Who was it who came into the room while I was here?" I said, "No one." "Why?" He said, "No, like it wasn't." "Who walked into the room?" He said, "Nobody." I said, what do you mean nobody?" He said, "I heard." I said, "They weren't here." He said, "I felt them." I said, "They weren't here." Well, I thought, all right. I finally insisted no one was there. He finally agreed with me, but I could tell he didn't believe me. It didn't matter. I didn't think about it much. I went into the next room. I adjusted the next patient. When she opened her eyes, she said, "Who was it who walked into the room when I was lying here?" I said, "No one." "Why?" Then I heard them at the door. I said, "They weren't at the door." She said, "I felt them there." All I can tell you.
So their eyes were closed.
Their eyes were closed, but they sensed that someone was in the room.
It's like they're like your sensitivity that was heightened, their sensitivity as well through you was heightened.
Apparently, just as I had been feeling people in my home, that weekend, that Sunday, that Thursday night before.
Yes.
They were feeling people in the room, standing. 7 patients in one day insisted that they were feeling people standing in the room, walking, running, and 2 of them actually looked me straight in the eye and said it felt as if somebody was flying around the ceiling. Now, this was my 12th year in practice. No one had ever said anything like this to me before, so you would think that this would have gotten my attention. But other patients were saying, "I can feel your hands before you touch me," which I didn't believe. And I said, "Oh, yes, sure you can. Close your eyes, lie down." So they closed their eyes. They were lying on the table, and I would hold my hands, palms toward them anywhere from inches to feet to yards away from them. And they could tell me, right shoulder, left ankle, so it sort of became a game because, well, it was my office and I could have whatever games I wanted. And as I played with this, I would see their eyes rapidly dart back and forth, tiny, tiny, tiny little muscles in their forehead or their chin would move and ripple, muscles that were so tiny we couldn't move them intentionally. We'd be pulling at their lips or pulling at their eyebrows. Then I'd see their fingers start to move, their feet. When they'd open their eyes, they were telling me they were seeing colors they'd never before seen. They were smelling fragrances they had never smelled before. And they were demonstrating healing, not very many of them. They were getting up. People who had wheelchairs, and they were able to walk. People were regaining vision, hearing, use of arms and legs. I would get calls days later from the patients saying that they wanted to bring me in their laboratory results and show me that their cancer tumors had vanished. Children with cerebral palsy and epilepsy were able to walk and run and play normally, speak normally, not have seizures, and not require medicine. Again, not every one of them. Just as with medicine, there are no promises or guarantees and nothing is 100%. But enough people so that we began to recognize that something truly substantial, something truly significant was occurring there. The phone started ringing. People were asking me to teach this. I said, teach it. You got to be crazy. I'm standing there waving my hands in the air looking like a fool. You go outside, wave your hands in the air. Let me know what your neighbors have to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet more the patients would call and they would say they just got home and they pulled up in front of their house. Their automatic garage door opened before they hit the little automatic button to open it, or they went inside and the lamp or TV started turning off and on. They felt sensations in their hands. They could hold their hands by someone in their family, and suddenly the grandfather could walk after the stroke, or the uncle would gain to use an arm or his hearing. And we began to recognize that once we interact with what science today calls the reconnective healing spectrum, once we interact with this more comprehensive, more expansive spectrum of healing, something changes within us that not only seems to allow for our own healing, but seems to allow us to facilitate healings for others. So I would call this woman who did this work for me, and she put me in touch with the woman who created the work. And apparently no one had had these responses before or after. I mean, it's much stranger than even that I told you. I mean, twice a week I was waking up and there was a light on somewhere in the house, not always the same one. A door opened somewhere in the house, which I know by habit I always would close. And even working with patients, at one point I got a couple points I got tiny little blisters in my palms. Once there was even a little bleeding. No, it was not a stigmata. It was more as if you accidentally stuck your hand with a little tin or a needle, but there it was just the same. And she said, no one's ever had these experiences before, and we pretty much determined that the person who created the work, it was as if they had fashioned or came up with a key. For everyone they taught to do that work, it's as if they gave them duplicates of that very same key and said to all these people, go out and try doors, keep trying doors, keep trying to do this on people. Somewhere there's a door that's supposed to open. And I was the door. I was the door. That does not make me the gift. It makes me the door. The fact is, if you look at your door right now, and if Oprah Winfrey walked in, no one would say, wow, what a wonderful door. The gift is the gift. The gift is what came through. As a matter of fact, the woman who did the work on me came into the office later to receive the gift of the reconnective healing. And we don't need to go through the process of that whole big ritual concept any longer. We are now able to facilitate healings for one another. This is why I teach this. I teach seminars around the world. I've trained over 70,000 people so far. My book, which is called The Reconnection, Heal Others, Heal Yourself, is an international bestseller in over 36 different languages. And we're here teaching this work around the globe. As a matter of fact, coming up soon in March 1st through the 4th in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, we're teaching this at the Kripalu Center, and we're teaching it March 30th, the last weekend in March, in Phoenix, Arizona. What happens at the seminars is basically this. Usually, except for Kripalu, which is a little stretched out, it's 4 days. Most of the seminars are a Friday night, a Saturday, and a Sunday. And what happens is on the Friday night, I present for approximately 3 hours. I talk about the history of the work, the theory of the work, how it came about, the philosophy, the principles within it, and then we demonstrate the healings on volunteers from the audience, so you can see an actual live healing maybe on yourself or on somebody that you know, and we'll give everyone an opportunity to feel it in your hands because it's extremely clear, it's extremely palpable. On Saturday and Sunday, however, it's quite a different thing. It's a real working seminar, and I'm going to tell everyone right now, don't come. And I mean this, don't come if you think we're all going to sit around, hold hands, drum, and sing Kumbaya, my Lord. It won't happen that way.
Okay.
The stage in the center of the room, seating on one side, massage tables on the others. And what happens is we demonstrate a level of the work from the stage. Then we go to the massage tables in groups of either 2 or 4. I walk around to each of the tables, and so does our internationally trained team of teaching assistants. We'll take your hands. We'll show you how to begin to feel different aspects of this. We might show you how to feel something in the air, maybe a foot or so or 2 away from the person who's lying down. You'll start to see their eyes rapidly dart back and forth. We'll show you how to feel something else. You'll see their fingers move or their feet respond. And as you begin to recognize that, when I'm here, I feel this and I see that. But when I'm here, I feel something else and I see something else. You begin to recognize your clear, distinct role in this healing process as a shepherd, you could say, taking them into another state of consciousness, another state of being that demonstrates itself, among other ways, clearly physically. And by the end of one weekend, not 10 weekends, not 2, but the end of one weekend, I can pretty much make you 2 promises. A, you will be able to do anything and everything in the way of healing that I can do. And B, you will be able to do anything and everything in the way of healing that any human being anywhere on this planet can do, whether they created what they want to call new energy healing techniques, whether they're masters or grandmasters, whether they were raised by a monk in a cave in a mountaintop in Tibet and fed grains of seed, each one blessed by an individual lama. It doesn't matter the story. Today, what it's about is about transcending the story, demystifying the healing process, recognizing that we can all access this. It is no longer about us looking for what makes each one of us special. What's really the key is for us to learn compassion and learn to see how each and every one of us are the same.
Mm-hmm. And word of mouth will spread. When something is great like this, the people will come. I do want you to share what your mother shared with you about her experience during birthing you into life.
Well, her experience was that she was lying on the delivery table. Now, I'm going to do this as best as possible from memory. She was lying on the delivery table, and she started hearing very, very loud sounds, like the roar of motors or engines. And she was wondering why no one else in the room seemed to notice them or be disturbed or distracted by them. And she felt them starting at the soles of her feet and then moving up to the tops of her feet and to her ankles and to her knees. And she knew that if it got to her heart, she would die, and she didn't want to die. She was giving birth to her first child. And she couldn't seem to get anyone's attention, and the next thing she knows, she left her body. And she starts to move up, and she moves up through levels of spirits who are disincarnate, who have left their bodies. The first level, she said, were the spirits who are still here on Earth, who feel that they've got work that is not yet complete. The second level she doesn't recall. The third level was the only one that was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for the beings on that level and uncomfortable for the rest of us to pass through. It was the level, the only one where people who had done the one thing to do that temporarily interrupts God's plan, and that was the level of people who had taken their own lives. She knew they were on that level for a much longer time. She did feel that eventually they do move through that level and continue on. Then she went up some more and some more and finally got to, I guess, the top, where she found herself drifting down a lane, although her feet weren't moving and she wasn't walking. And this is what she feels most people speak about as the tunnel. She was drifting down this lane where she saw beautiful flowers of colors she had never before seen. She saw everyone that she'd known from this lifetime and other lifetimes, and saw how clear it was that we recognized one another. There was no verbal communication, but one look would convey volumes of information. She saw how ridiculous it was to judge anyone on their appearance, and she was moving toward this very, very, very bright light. It was so bright that she was afraid to open her eyes to look at it, that it might burn her, but she felt compelled to, and she did look at it, and she realized there was nothing physical to burn or to hurt. And when she was presented to that light, her life was laid out before her, and she could see it was a good life, and yet there was no judgment, which I know sounds contradictory, but she said it makes sense to you when you're there. You'll understand. And she was suddenly imbued with the secrets of the universe, why the earth is round, the grass is green, the sky is blue, how we can't blame God for anything, no matter how awful it seems, such as drive-by shootings of children, and how everything is part of a plan, a learning process for us, that there's a reason for everything, and everything makes perfect sense when you're there, but you're not here to understand the reasons. We're here to be learning what's going on. She saw how ridiculous it was, utterly ridiculous, for young men and women to go out and lose their lives in war, fighting the battles for older men and women, how that war is a temporary state of barbarism that we will eventually outgrow, thank God.
Yes.
And all of these things, and suddenly it was such a beautiful place where we all come home to, where we all come here from. There was only one regret that anyone ever had along the way in the dying process, and that's that those people left behind mourn them because they don't realize what a beautiful place it is. And then suddenly she found herself being sent back. After all the struggling that she did not to die in the first place, now she didn't want to come home. But she was told she had to go back to raise her child. And she felt herself losing all of the information, all of the insights she was given. And she struggled to hold on to those that she came back with, and talked about the story a little bit in the beginning, but people weren't talking about it back then. There wasn't the wonderful works of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross or Raymond Moody or, Daniel Brinkley or the others who have talked on the subject. So she did stop speaking about it. And then I think one day when I was around 5, 6, or 7, and I started asking questions about death, was when she sat me down and she shared that story. So it is the second chapter of the book. It was the most difficult chapter to write because I had to go back and forth with her on the phone all the time to try to get just the right wording. And even then she would say there just are no words to convey it.
Wow.
It's a very wonderful chapter for people who are going through either their own death or who are going through a death process of someone close or near to them, because I get reports all the time that it's allowed people to feel so much better and to come to terms and a balance with the transition. That makes me feel very happy. I know I've made a contribution. I can't go into this whole story because we won't finish it in time. But I remember that I was explaining, I had a clear understanding that this work was changing our DNA. And of course, at that time it just seemed an outlandish thing to talk about DNA changes. We now have studies that show, we have 5 international studies so far, with a 6th one being planned, that shows that this restructures, as the researchers put it, or reconnects, as I put it, our DNA. The most recent study that showed this was done with Russian Olympic athletes at the main university in St. Petersburg in Russia. And I was there working with, I believe it was 60 people, and we worked with the Russian Olympic athletes. We let each of them experience approximately 3 minutes or so of the reconnective healing. and there was a control group that experienced regular energy healing, the energy healing that we're familiar with. And then they were sent home, they were monitored, and they were studied and retested 10 days later. 10 days later, after that 3-minute session, they each, 100% of them, of the athletes, showed a huge improvement, demonstrably, scientifically, statistically, in their red blood cells, their white blood cells, their humoral levels, their emotional states, and their DNA. As a matter of fact, there's a book that one of the head researchers there just put out on, I believe it's available on Amazon, called Science Confirms Reconnective Healing, which I wouldn't have dreamed that type of a title would come right out, but there it is. So this is our ascension. How will our bodies change? How will the shift be? Will we notice it physically? I'm not sure so much. I think more we're going to notice a change in the DNA. And what the change in the DNA does, well, think about your computers. You've got computer hardware, and in order to do anything with it, you have to put a computer software program in. You get information from within the computer, and you access information from that internet field out there somewhere. Upgrade the software, better information from within the computer and better access to that internet field out there somewhere. How do our brains work? We access information from within the brain, and we access information from what science today calls neural-point fields. On our basic level, we do it every day. When one child stares at another child who's asleep, and that child wakes up, we're in the field. When we think about a friend we haven't thought about for 15 years, and 15 minutes later the phone rings, we're in the field. People who are geniuses, people who are psychics, people who are healers. It's not that big of a secret. All they're really doing is accessing that field a little more sensitively, a little more here, a little more there, and not second-guessing the information as it comes in. So what if our brains are our hardware? What if our DNA is our software? And what if we are doing what science is showing us, restructuring or reconnecting our DNA through this work called Reconnective Healing? Then what we are doing for one another is facilitating a human software upgrade, which allows better access to the information within and better access to the more multidimensional universe around us. And since we go where our attention is, the more our awareness is in the multidimensional world, the more multidimensional we become. This, to me, is our ascension.
Very good. We are facilitating the human software upgrade. You yourself, I want to allow you to tell the time about how you discovered that you were doing the work to reconnect the DNA. In your book, your story about your clients that suddenly spoke in a strange voice, a channeled message to you.
Over 50 different patients from January through March of 1994 lost consciousness and spoke 6 verbatim phrases. I'll share with you the first 4. We are here to tell you to continue doing what you were doing. What you were doing is bringing light and information onto the planet. What you were doing is reconnecting strings, and what you were doing is reconnecting strands. Now, what I just talked about with the DNA is the reconnection of strands. Strings are simultaneous planes of existence. See, the interplay is as the strands restructure and reconnect, we become more aware and multidimensional of what's happening there. Now, the person who originally spoke these 6 words, these phrases, he spoke the phrases on one day. 2 days later, 3 other patients said it. A few days later, 5 other patients said it. And all in all, over this 3-month period of time, 50, so 50 different patients lost consciousness and spoke these 6 phrases. And then, at the end of that 3-month period, it all stopped except for the original person. And the original person who brought this through, we would continue to talk and share this information, and we've recorded it since about 1994 up through now. And I am right now this weekend working on a book, putting this information together to share.
So any skepticism that you had is over as you know the truth. You feel and know deep in your heart that this is your truth.
This is my experience. This is what happened. I mean, I had to go through my own skepticism, and once I passed that, no one else's skepticism really matters that much to me because I had to get through my own. But if you'd like, what I'll be happy to do is share a little bit, just a couple of excerpts from the book that I'm working on.
Please do. We're happy to hear that.
Okay, here we go. There is a lot that needs to be said in various ways. We understand ourselves in a limited fashion, and we need to carry this understanding as a life process. It is the unveiling of a multifaceted force within our life. We need to peel away the exterior so that that internal being, so that that eternal soul that resides within our framework can share itself. It's the unveiling of a multifaceted force within our lives so that this internal being shines through to those we come into contact. And it is that eternal soul that resides within our framework which is being covered up in many ways by our fears and apprehensions. In your work as a healing practitioner, that is what you need to do, to unveil your soul. It is not a simple process. Stripping away of ego is an eternal process. This selflessness that must shine through the being that can reach in without interference. Once you allow your soul, that egoless purity, to come through, that is almost a common denominator. That is almost a common denominator in that it has the ability to automatically fuse with the frequency of the person you're coming into contact with. So your job in this process is to strip away the defense, strip away the mind, strip away the control mechanisms and the techniques on this plane. Let them go. Let them be a part of an exterior that has nothing to do with you, and present that soul in the room. It will automatically do the work. That energy is the common universal language of the cosmos. It is understood immediately and is felt intrinsically.
This work is definitely proving that we are light beings. Wonderful.
Definitely we are, and we are stepping into that, and it's our responsibility. We are standing on the precipice of human evolution right now. Are we always? Probably, on some level or another. And yet, is any one child more special than another? Is any one child not special? This is so unique and special to us right now, and this is where we are, and we're truly blessed to be experiencing this lifetime in this time. The empowerment message is that we must learn to look inside, that the gifts, that the insights are all inside, that we can't stand in fear, protecting ourselves with amulets and crystals and shaking off negative energy and facilitate healings that reside in love. We can't facilitate a gift that we don't accept ourselves. We can't stand in lack and limitation, trying to become more through techniques and rituals and crystals and such, and facilitate healings that reside in abundance. Every choice we make comes from love, prosperity, abundance, light, unity, and oneness, or from fear, lack, limitation, and the separation, the illusion of separation, the illusion of darkness. And we have to step into the light if that means, even if that means stepping through our fears. We have to let go of the control mechanisms that we have on this plane to become one and flow with the universe. Flow forward, flow forward.
Thank you, Dr. Eric Pearl, for being here today. Thank you, too, for listening and sharing in this space today. We leave you now with music from the universe, literally sacred geometry of music, as musical notes were assigned to mathematical equations. The result is this beautiful music, available at acoustichealth.com.